All right, so cross-legged. And just take a moment to settle in there, find an easy place to be. So let those legs relax best you can. Let those shoulders relax, maybe give them a little wiggle, soften the jaw. Let's just find a long spine for a moment and close the eyes. And soften the jaw. And just start to feel the breath in the body. Just taking a moment to land, to arrive. In this moment, setting our intention to be as fully in the moment and as present as we can throughout our practice today. So each time you, just like in Shavasana, so each time throughout your practice that maybe we're holding a pose and your mind gets a little bored and it starts to wander off, maybe coming back, just like we do in Shavasana again, to the breath, noticing the sensations in the body and just bringing it all back right on into the moment. And so coming back to that breath again, just feeling that breath, coming into a little deeper breath, feeling a little more movement. And trying to get that breath down into the bottom of the lungs. And a little deeper breath if you can, for just 2 more nice, long, slow, deep breaths, arriving fully in this body with this breath in this moment. And then after your next exhale, just pause for a moment, noticing the body, noticing any sensations. And starting to work into our seated cow and cat. So when you're ready, pulling those hips forward, lifting that heart up, draw those shoulders back and down, squeezing those shoulder blades together as you lift the chin. And then on our exhale, pulling those hips back, rounding that spine, and letting that head drop down. And keeping the eyes closed if you can, as you just start to explore moving this body, noticing how it feels. To get some movement going in those hips and that spine and even the shoulders and neck. There's a reason we use cow and cat so much in the beginning of our practice. It's just a good way to get the whole torso moving right up through the shoulders and neck. Let's go for one more. And then the next time you exhale and land in cat, grab those knees and just lean on back, almost like you're going to fall backwards. And push that spine, push into that spine as you tuck that chin in. And draw that right ear towards that right shoulder. Slowly listen to your body. If you're tight in the upper back, that can be intense. And just breathing there for a moment, noticing whatever sensations you feel, keeping the head aiming straight forward, so not turning the head at all. And then slowly lift the head up, bring it to the other side. And keep that breath going. And bring that head back to center. Slowly bring it back up and bring it forward. Starting to bring it forward slowly into a forward bend, keeping those legs wherever they're at and just listening to that body. It's early. We're just starting to wake it up. Even if you're doing this on the recording later, it's still early in our practice to be forcing things. So just notice. And coming on back to center, let's switch legs. So bring that other leg in front if you can. And same thing, let's lift that heart and find that forward bend. So taking your time, once again, this side may be different. Keep that breath going. And let's take it on forward into tabletop. So some of you might be able to just roll on forward right out of that cross-legged. You might have to shift to the side, whatever you need to do to get there. Bring it on around to tabletop. So taking a moment to get those knees under the hips, wrists under the shoulders, spread those fingers wide and spin the hands open just a little bit. So kind of the space in between your middle finger and first finger is aiming forward at least. You can even open them up a little bit more than that. And then just shift the hips from side to side. And let's make a nice big circle with those hips, just rolling them on around. So shifting over to the side, pushing the hips back, over to the other side, shifting forward a little bit. Just waking up all these joints, knees, hips, shoulders, wrists, other direction. And bring it on back to center. So let's walk those hands on over to the right and tuck the chin and look at your legs. So we're gonna walk on over and start to drop the right hip down. Walk your hands closer. So they're a little closer to you. We're really relying on the right hand here, not so much the left. We want that left leg to stack right on top. So the hips are still stacked as we push that right hip down towards the floor and try to sit up. So we're walking the hands closer and pushing up away from the floor as we pull that hip down. So the trick here is not to let that left hip roll back because we end up just sitting down. And so we just want to pull down through the outside of that hip, getting into that upper part of that IT band. We'll give that right wrist a little love in a moment. All right, let's take it over to the other side. So keep watching those legs so they don't get all twisty. Taking a moment, that hip is staying right in line with the knee. And again, you got to kind of walk the hands closer, sit up, draw the hip down towards the floor. That other leg is stacked right on top as you draw that hip down towards the floor. Keep that breath going. And bring it on back. Let's walk back to center and just rise up to those knees for a moment. Standing on the knees, they might need to come apart a little. Just give those wrists a little love. Roll them on around. Excuse me. And let's tuck those fingers down towards the floor and gently pull that hand towards you. So you're pushing forward through the wrist, nice straight arm as you gently pull those fingers towards you. And other side. And let's take it back down. Let's come to our elbows for a moment to give those wrists a little bit of a break. So come on down to those elbows. Knees are still under the hips. Let's stretch that right leg on out behind us. Bring that hip down if it's lifting up, engage the core. And then on the inhale, take that leg over to the right. And on the exhale, take it over to the left. So side to side. Trying to keep the foot the same level all the way across. Watching that foot, so looking over the shoulder as you go to both directions. All right, let's take it on over to the left, as far over as you can. Tuck those toes, plant that foot on the floor, and curve around. Coffee's in the way, blocks are in the way. So you're drawing that left shoulder and hip towards each other. Engage the core, lift the leg up, take it over, keep going, keep going, keep going, so you can get it all the way over to the other side. So just take a peek underneath and make sure that left hip is right over the knee. And then turn those right toes forward if you can and shift the weight into the outside of the foot so that whole foot is on the floor. And bring that right hip down, just waking up that inner thigh. And just keep pulling down through that inner thigh. So you're drawing the inner thigh towards the floor. Engage the core. Actually, let's walk the hands in and rise up. Do a quick Parigasana since we're here. So I look down and I am not where I need to be. My hip is way over here. So I'm going to scooch over to get this hip stacked right above that knee. So the hip joint and knee joint are on top of each other. And then I'm going to scooch this right foot forward a little bit. So the ankle is a little further forward than this opposite knee. And then try and bring those hips square to the front. Okay, and bring that right hip down if you can, a little bit. Try and let that inner thigh area relax. Let's bring that left arm up. Take a nice inhale. Exhale, come on over to the right. Inhale up. Exhale over. Inhale up. Exhale over. One more time. Let's hold that. So use that right arm against the thigh to push you open so that left shoulder doesn't roll forward. Reaching, you can come really close, you can bring the arm away, you can leave the arm way down here, kind of to a T. It's probably better for you, Lynn, using that right arm against that thigh to keep this shoulder in line with the hip. And then come on over as far as feels good, sliding those right fingertips towards the floor and find that breath. Engage the core to lift you up. Kickstand that left foot in towards center a little bit and hop on over to that left hand. So you might have to do a little adjusting there to get open to the side. So the wrist is right under the shoulder. The wrist is in line with the knee. It's straight out from the knee, and that wrist is right underneath that shoulder. So you kind of have this box, this square underneath your torso there. And then lift that right leg up, lift the right arm up. So on the inhale, we're going to lift that leg as high as we can. Reach for the sky, engage the core. On the exhale, bring that foot all the way down to the floor and stretch that arm overhead. And really stretch, so when you reach, and if you can't reach overhead, still push away from the floor and push these right ribs up to the sky. So even if this is it for your arm, you're pushing those ribs way up. And then of course, if you can draw the arm overhead, great. So on the inhale, lift up, really lift high, reach high. That's our inhale. Exhale, stretch it out, push those ribs to the sky. Inhale up, exhale. One more. And stretch it out, roll to the floor, spin towards the floor till you can get those right fingertips on the floor and walk it around to the front. And let's keep that leg out to the side. So just tuck your chin and look underneath, get things back in line where we kind of had them. So your left foot's right behind the knee, and then you can scooch that right foot forward. Let's take that right hand and move it forward. Open up that left arm, roll that wrist around, give it a little love, I like to say. Maybe make a fist and roll it around. It's a little bit of a different stretch for that wrist. Right, open it up big, nice inhale. Exhale, thread it through like you're gonna grab your right big toe, dive down towards the floor. So you gotta really bend that right elbow to make that happen. Inhale, open back up. Exhale, sweep it back through. One more time. Next time you come through, stay there. So take a moment to land. Make sure your hips aren't pushing back too far. Your left hip is still over your knee as you land. So if you can't get all the way down to the shoulder, land on the elbow instead of the shoulder. Maybe you can bring that right arm up, maybe not. And then you press into that left arm to try and spin open a little more. Maybe the arm comes behind the back. Keep the breath going. Unwind, plant that right palm down, press on up, slide that knee back underneath you into tabletop. Nice inhale into cow. Exhale, cat. And yogi's choice, downward facing dog or extended child's pose. So taking a moment to find that place. If you're coming up into down dog, Let's find some movement there and just play around, move the body in whatever way feels good. Get those hips moving, get those shoulders moving. And if you're in extended child's pose, find what needs to be found there. Tuning in wherever you end up. All right, and let's all bring it up to downward facing dog if you're not there already. And press on back, draw those heels down, and shift the hips forward. So you're trying to reach your bottom up towards the sky a little more. So you're sinking into the shoulders just a little bit to get an extra stretch in the backs of the legs. So push the knees back, get the legs as straight as you can. Even if you're not all the way back into your down dog because your shoulders are too tight, you can take the hands a little wider and bring them a little closer so that you can push back a little better and really get into these legs. All right, and let's drop it back down to our tabletop and then down to our elbows. So we can do that sequence on the other side. So get those elbows right underneath the shoulders, knees under the hips, engage the core, stretch that left leg on out behind you, square off the hips. So get that hip aiming straight towards the floor. On the inhale, take it out to the left, look over your left shoulder. On the exhale, take it over to the right, look over your right shoulder. Again, it's like we're drawing a line with our big toe. We get that foot a little pointed. We're drawing a straight line from one side to the other. All right, the next time you come over to the right, bring that foot way over, tuck those toes, plant that foot on the floor, and draw that right hip towards the right shoulder, curving around. It's like you're trying to make a C shape out of your torso. Keep that breath going. And engage your core, lift the leg up, float it all the way over to the other side till the foot can hit the floor. And then take a moment, look underneath. I noticed my hip was too far forward. It wasn't right over the knee. So again, we kind of want that hip joint. I'm gonna take this earring off because it's hitting the microphone. I should just not wear jewelry when I'm teaching. So we want that right hip joint right over the knee. And then let's adjust that left foot. So we've got that. And so if you drew right now, if you drew a line, that ankle would be a little forward of the knee, just like we had it for our Parigasana. So trying to get as much of the foot glued to the floor as you can, toes aiming forward, and then bring that left hip down. So drawing that left inner thigh towards the floor, waking up that inner thigh, keep really energetically pulling it down, even if it doesn't feel like it's going anywhere, but you're getting a stretch on that left inner thigh. Keep that breath going. I'm trying to think, did we do anything else before Parigasana? I don't remember. Let's come on up. And we did our thread the needle stuff, but that was after. All right, come on up. All right, so let's get that hip right over the knee again. So make any adjustments you need to make there. Bring those hips square to the front. Bring that left hip down best you can. So on this side, it's totally different for me. It was really easy to bring that hip down on the other side, and it is not on this side. So just notice that, and bring that right arm up when you're ready. Okay, and then use that left arm. So it's flowing out of it. That's right. Inhale up, exhale over into your side bend, and then inhale up, exhale over. That's the problem when I make things up. Like, wait a minute, what did we do? Okay, and so let's hold it. And again, if you had to make a modification on the other side, so if you couldn't keep that arm really close and you brought it down more to a T, do that on this side as well. Sliding those left fingertips towards the floor. Keep that breath going. Keep that right shoulder in line with the hip. It's not gonna be right over it because we're coming in side bend, but it's in line with it. All right, and then find that breath wherever you end up for Parigasana gate pose. Breathe, breathe, breathe. Engage your core, lifting up. Kickstand that right foot in towards center a little bit, and hop on over to that right hand. And look down, look at your lines, wrist in line with the knee, wrist right under the shoulder, spin the hips open to the side. Stretch that arm up. On the inhale, reach high, lift high, higher, 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 all the way down to the ground, stretch it overhead. So inhaling, lifting up, exhaling, stretching it out. And again, when you stretch it out, push those ribs up to the sky. Even if you can't bring your arm overhead, if you really push away from the floor and round those ribs and try and push those left ribs to the ceiling, you'll still get a nice stretch. So finding your rhythm with the breath again. All right, the next time you stretch it out long, pause there, find that stretch, spin towards the floor till those left fingertips can hit and spin your way back around to the front. Take a moment to readjust. The legs are not going to be where they need to be. Hip is back over the knee, ankles behind the knee, and then scooch that left foot forward a bit, finding that same positioning we had before. And let's move that left hand forward. Open up that right arm, give that right wrist a little love, roll it on around. Make that fist, roll it around. Nice big inhale, open up. Exhale, bend that left elbow deeply so you can reach through and try and touch that left big toe. Not that you're gonna, but maybe. Inhale, opening. Exhale, diving through. All right, the next time you dive through, pause for a moment, find that same place you found on the other side. So if you were able to get all the way down onto the shoulder, come on down. If you're on the elbow, come on down to the elbow. And if you can open up that left arm, great. If not, that's okay. You can still kind of push yourself open even without bringing the arm up. Maybe that arm comes behind the back, maybe not. Find your breath wherever you're at. Notice. And then bring that left hand down, push up. Slide that knee back underneath you for tabletop. Nice big inhale into cow. Exhale, cat. Tuck those toes, lift those knees up, downward facing dog. Pedal the feet, rock the hips, find some movement in those hips and legs. Okay, so let's get into the back of those legs a little bit more. Monica, if I'm remembering correctly, it might not be you, but I'm pretty sure it's you, like with the tight calves.
Oh yeah, I think I've heard all over my legs.
Yeah, I thought it was you. I'm like, I'm pretty sure it's her. I think I've showed you this before, right? So it's this railroad tracks in the feet. And when we press on back, even if you can't push back all the way, like even if you're kind of shifted forward a little bit, again, we can bring those hands wider, but when you push back, shifting those hips forward, so sticking your butt up towards the sky, really straightening out the legs, drawing the heels down, and sinking the chest down and coming back out of it. And so just rocking back and forth with that. So you're kind of getting this momentum to shift forward and really get some momentum to push yourself back and reach those sitting bones up to the sky, heels down, getting that nice stretch. I can't stay there because I get a little nerve zing when I do that. So it's good, but with nerve stretches for me. And so you may not get that nerve stretch, but hopefully you get that nice stretch down into the calves, into the ankles, obviously the backs of the legs. We can all play with that a little bit, right? We don't have to stay stagnant in our downward facing dog. I know we do a lot of down dogs, but the reason is because it's a place, it's just like our cow and cat and our tabletop. Like we can touch lots of things from there. All right, let's take it down to extended child's pose. Give those wrists and shoulders a break. So whatever you need for the wrists. So if you like that variation, we're going to make those teepees and push the wrists forward to stretch them out. Great, do that. If they just want to rest on down and the whole body can rest, that's great too. So hopefully your hips are pushing back a little further than mine. This knee replacement someday. I think I told you I have a friend who had something done with his knee. He didn't even have a replacement. I don't think maybe it was just a partial. It took him like 10 years, 10 years to get into a full extended child's pose again. I'm like, oh no. It's okay. It's all good. Find your breath wherever you're at. Find what needs to be found for your body here, right? our poses don't have to be exactly the same every time. We can play with them a little. All right, let's bring it back up to downward facing dog just for a moment. Okay, back onto those railroad tracks. So those 6 inches or so between the feet, and press on back and shift the hips from side to side, kind of like we did down in tabletop. And press it on back, stretch it on out, bend those knees, walk it to the front, keeping that space in between the feet. Half lift, inhale, exhale, hello hamstrings, pivot those hips. Take those sitting bones up to the sky again, nice flat back, draw those shoulders back and down, keeping the heart space open, nice open chest. We're not rounding the shoulders at all. So we can get a nice effective stretch for those hamstrings. And then bend those knees, drop it on down into this supported ragdoll. So we're not bothering to widen the feet like we normally do in ragdoll. We're just gonna hang out here and let them stay put for now and just hang, hang. Let the arms hang, let the head hang, let the jaw soften, maybe give it a little wiggle. And then let's lift halfway, straighten out those legs and spine and grab a block. So we're gonna bring that block right underneath the nose. And we're gonna use the long, thin side. Okay, so it's on that short edge. We're gonna bring that, bend the knees a little bit, bring that left palm right into center, right underneath the nose. Spin on open to the right, bring that right arm around the back. So as we spin open, we're straightening the right leg and bending the left knee. So straighten that right leg all the way and bend that left knee, keep bending it, keep bending it, keep bending it till it won't bend anymore. And think about your hips. So a lot of times what happens here is the one hip pulls forward and the other one pulls back. We're trying to get the hip bones to stay in line, the hip joints to stay in line with each other as we open up that right hip. So we're trying to get the front of the right hip to spin open to the side as much as we can to get into the outside of this hip. Let me show it from the other angle too. So feet are still on those railroad tracks. That's important, those 6 inches apart or so. So as we're coming here, let's see what usually happens. So in this case, the left hip pulls forward and the right hip pulls back. So trying not to let that happen, trying more to have it be about twisting as much of your body open to the side as you can. And then let's see what happens if we pull that right hip back a little bit. Can we get in to the outside of this hip a little more? Keep that breath going. Maybe the arm comes around the back. If your wrist is bothering you, you can come onto fists, or you can use, if it's available to you, you can use fingertips on the floor. We don't need to use a block. Okay, bend the right knee before we release. And come on over to the other side. So take a moment, get that positioning, palm right in center, starting to spin open. Thinking about those hips staying in line to start. Bend that right knee. Think of this idea that you're trying to get the front of that left hip way open to the side. Keep that breath going. Bring that arm around the back. And then pull that left hip back a little bit and see how that feels. Keep that breath going. And slowly release on back to center, half lift, inhale. Exhale, hinge. And all the way up, nice big inhale. Into the heart. So now let's bring those feet all the way together. All the way. It's funny to me when I say bring your feet all the way together, and I look around the room when I have people here and they still have space in between their feet. Like, no, I really mean all the way together. So squish those feet on up together, hug those legs together in center, scoop the tailbone under a little bit, give those glutes a little squeeze, and then let's take those arms on up. So reaching those arms on up overhead and coming on over to the right. So drop that right arm down, reach, and again, if you can't bring this arm really close, you can keep it to a T. I would rather have that here because it's more about the outside of the hip and this lower side body that we're trying to get into. So it's not so much about the shoulder. So as we slide those right fingertips down the leg, push the left hips over. So push over into the left hips, I should say, right? And you can play around with what happens with this arm. It's more about how low can we bring the right shoulder till we start to feel that stretch in the lower side body, just above the hip, maybe even down into the hip. So don't be afraid to push those hips over. And then you can play around with bringing the arm closer if it's available. Keep that breath going wherever you end up. Breathe, 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 breathe. Engage the core. Slowly lift up. Float that left arm down. Bring that right one up. Reach on up. Bring the arm down to a T. Let's all do that. And then we can always go deeper from there with that shoulder. Okay, so palm facing up, start sliding those left fingertips down, push those over into the right, outside of the right hip. Push those hips right on over, root down into those feet. See how it's like you're trying to touch the outside of the knee with your fingertips. Keep that breath going. And then if it's available, we can start to play around with that arm coming closer. Keep the breath going. Breathe, breathe, breathe. Even if they're little mini breaths, engage the core. Come on up, float that arm down. So sometimes when we're in a deep side bend, it's hard to breathe because our lungs are squished. So maybe it's those little tiny breaths. All right, let's take it up. Nice inhale. Exhale, dive down. Careful, our feet are closer. It's a little more balancy. Pivot those hips, finding the back of those legs again. Bend those knees. Lower those hips down. Keep coming down. See if you can get the hips as low as the knee. So the hips are right behind the knee. Hug the knees together. So you can dive forward and just bring those fingertips on the floor. You can lay right down on those thighs and bring the arms along the sides into airplane arms, or you can sweep them forward if you like. So we've got gentle here on the floor, little in between, a little more moderate, gazing at the big toes, finding the breath. Slowly bring it up into Utkatasana, chair pose, hug those knees together. So again, it can be a nice gentle baby chair. It can be a nice deep strong chair. So if you're coming into this deeper variation, sink your weight into your heels so your toes are light. This is only if you're doing the stronger variation, and keep that breath going wherever you end up. Slowly come up, reach up, let those arms float down. So I was going to do eagle pose, but it takes too much time, and I feel like we can get it's too much about the balance and not enough about the stretch of what I want to do. So we're going to get into the stretch of it instead. So we're going to come down to the floor and have a seat. So in eagle pose, like we're wrapping these legs up, right? With the intent to obviously balance. It's a balance pose, but it also kind of gets into this area we're focusing on a little bit today, this IT band. But sometimes you can't even get into it because you can't stand on you can't get into the balance. So if we do it more down here, we can play with this a little bit more. So just kind of leaning on back. We're gonna bring that right foot kind of in towards center and just cross the left leg over. So just crossing on over. And then seeing if you can wrap those legs around each other at all. Just listen to your knee. So this left knee more than anything. So if you can't get those left toes tucked behind the leg, that's okay. They're just here, right? And then draw the knees over towards the right. And then don't let your whole body just fall on down. Keep your bottom square on the floor. If your wrists are bothering you, you can come down to the elbows. So it makes it a little different, but that's okay. It's still good. And so trying to keep the butt glued as you bring those knees over. And then unwind those legs. Cross that right leg over the left. So just starting with these crossed legs, wrapping them around a little bit more if you can. And then drawing those knees over to the left. So pull down into that right hip as you do that. All right, let's bring it back to center. Let's come down to our elbows if you're not there already, just so our wrists can have a rest. And bend the knees, bring the feet back. So inch them back a little bit more so the ankles are kind of in line with the knees. And those knees are hugging together. So the knees are touching. Lift that left knee, go this way, out of the way just a little bit. So just move it over so you can start to draw the right knee down towards the floor. So it's just this kind of weird position, right? So you can stay here. You got to use a little core to lift that leg up and lay it on top of the other one. So this might be too much. So if it is, go back so you can lift that left leg up and bring it on top of the right leg and bring it down further. So same thing, we're trying to take that right hip and bring it down, trying to keep as much of the hips on the floor as or the back of the hips on the floor as we can as we draw that knee down. Listen to your body. Lift back up, reposition those legs. Let's get them back to where we started for that other side. And then start to draw that left knee down. Just work on that for a moment while you work on trying to keep the back of the hips pulling towards the floor. So, you know, if I just kind of let my hips lift, sure, I can come all the way over this way, but we miss the stretch. So try and keep the back of the hips down as you come over. So the side is much tighter for me because this is my knee replacement side. So lift up, bring that leg on top if it's available. If that's too much, then don't do it. And keep that breath going. Keep those left ribs and left hip pulling towards the floor as push the knee in the opposite direction. Keep that breath going. And lift it up. Coming on back, and let's inch our way down all the way to the floor. Okay, and let's bring that left ankle on top of that right thigh. And draw that knee into the chest for figure four. Okay, so drawing that right knee towards you. I like to not, so some of you like to interlace and thread through and grab the back of the right thigh. That's totally fine. Maybe the shin. I use the power of the right leg to keep pulling that knee towards me as I push the left knee away. So you can play around with this a little bit, but tune into the back of your hips. Want to keep the back of those hips glued to the floor once again. So flex that left foot and play around with drawing that right knee closer. Close the eyes, tune in. Should feel this in the back of the left hip, the left glutes, you know, somewhere between the outside of the hip and right kind of on the center of the bottom. Find that breath. And if you're tight on the inner thighs, you might get it on the inner thigh a little bit too, depending on how deep you come into this. Okay, let's bring that foot to the floor. Keep the left foot where it is. Cross it over just like we did a moment ago when we were sitting up. So just cross that left leg over the right and drop on over to the right. So if it's available, try and kick that right leg out straight. Let me go to a different angle here. Right, so we're falling over so that that right leg is kind of on top of that left. It's kind of pinning it down, if you will. Pay attention to your knees, of course, with all of this. Okay, maybe your right hand can come down and hold that knee in place as you try and twist. Try and twist in the opposite direction. So you're rolling the left ribs open as you're pushing down on that knee. So you can play around with what's going on in the legs a little bit. If you're able to wrap them around into eagle, you can try that as well. And slowly release. Let's go all the way over to the other side. Dropping those legs over. So now that left leg is on top of the right. As you just fall on over into this side. Find that breath. Again, trying to spin the torso towards the floor. And bring it back up. Hug, unwind those legs, bring those knees on into the chest, give a little squeeze, a little rock. And let's find our figure 4 on the other side. Let's bring that right ankle on top. Find your way into it on the side, flex that foot. Ooh, wow. Side so much tighter. Find that breath, go slowly, tuning in, trying to let the area where you feel the sensation the most, let it relax best you can. Tell it to relax. Come on, let go, relax. Keep that breath going. All right, let's release that foot down to the floor, cross that right leg over. So you're just crossing your legs to start and then dropping on over to the left. And then maybe you kick that left leg out straight to kind of pin that right leg down. If that's too much, then you can play around with the positioning of the legs. If you wrapped those legs around into eagle, you can do that too. And then roll those right ribs open, spin those right ribs open. Maybe that left hand is gently pressing on the outside of the knee. So it's like you're trying to pull the right hip away from the knee. Find that breath wherever you end up. Notice how it feels on this side. You might get some low back stuff here, depending on what you've got going on. All this hip stuff is associated with the low back, right? It's attached. They all attach right in there. All right, let's slowly release. Bring it on up through center, all the way over to the other side. So again, that right leg is kind of just stacked on top of that left knee, drawing that left knee down, and then rolling those left ribs open. Finding that breath. And slowly releasing to center, unwinding those legs, hugging those knees right on in, give them a nice squeeze, and give a little rock. Then stretch the legs up, straight up, and just cross that right leg over the left. So you're kind of crossing, making an X. Bend the knees and let the feet drop. And then pull the knees into the chest. So your legs are crossed, the knees are at center, and you're just pulling the knees into the chest. As you do that, pull the hips on down into the floor, the back of the hips. So if you're getting a stretch already, you can just work with this. If you want a little more, you can take that left hand down outside the ankle and try and slide that right hand down the leg a little bit and pull your ankles towards your shoulders. So that might be too much on the knees. It might be too much. You can flex the feet or point them. You could play around with the feet, but try and keep those hips pulling down. It's like this reclined cow face we're trying to do. And release, stretch those legs straight up to the sky. And then cross that left leg over the right. Really get them crossed. So making that X, bending the knees, dropping the feet down, grabbing those knees, pulling them on into the chest, root down into the center of the back of the hips, and slide those hands down the leg, maybe just to the outside of the shins a little bit, maybe a little lower to the ankles, depending on how long your arms are and how far away the feet are. And then pull down into the back of the hips as you pull the ankles towards the shoulders. Keep that breath going. And release, stretch those legs on up to the sky. And just pause here for a moment. Let the arms flop open. Close the eyes. Just let those feet float above the hips. Those legs float above the hips. And then just like we do when we're at the wall sometimes, starting to let those feet fall open. Let them just fall. Let the legs get heavy. They won't go too far, I promise. You just let the legs relax. Maybe reach up and give a gentle push if it's available. If that doesn't feel like too much, find that breath wherever you're at. You don't even need to do that, right? Just working on letting the legs relax. And then engage the core. So you slowly, slowly, slowly start to float the legs back up using those inner thigh muscles until the legs touch, and bring those knees back into the chest. Give a little squeeze, a little rock. Let's stretch out that right leg and bring it all the way down to the floor. Then bring that left, so left knee's in line with the hip. Bring that knee on over into a twist. So as you come over, maybe you lift up so you're right on the outside of that left hip, and bring that right knee towards the floor. It doesn't have to touch. And then spin open into your twist. Let that right arm flop open. And then you're gently pushing down on that knee as you're pulling. Same dynamic we've been using in these twists, right? So we're spinning the ribs and the hip, the front of that right hip away from the knee. Like we're trying to get more of our back on the floor as we gently push the knee down. Engage your core as you try and spin open more. You can even kind of take the right hand to the front of that hip, grabbing the hip and pulling it away from the knee. You can play around with that a little bit. But the knee is in line with the hip, so it's not below or above, it's straight on out. You can bring it up a little bit, so you can bring it, the knee can be higher than the hip, we just don't want it lower. We're working, trying to get into the outside of that hip. And release to center, hugging, keeping that leg extended as you pull the knee into the chest. And then switch, stretch that other leg out, bring it on down. Take your time finding your way into the twist on the other side. Again, maybe when you roll onto that side, you lift up so you can get onto the outside of that hip a little better. And then spin on open. Keep that breath going wherever you end up. Notice how this side feels compared to the other. You might not get a whole lot of sensation in the outside of that hip in this, but it might be subtle. It might not. If you're really tight, you might feel it quite a bit. And slowly releasing back to center, hugging that knee into the chest, squeeze it on in. And then bring that other one in to meet it, squeezing in once again. Rock if it feels good. And then doing anything else there is left for your body to do. Any other stretches, movements, maybe a reclined butterfly or a bridge or a happy baby. Whatever would feel good for your body right now. So just take a moment. And when you're ready, finding that just right place, whether it's Shavasana or legs up the wall or any other place, Any place the body can be comfortable. And taking a moment to settle in. Making any last movements that need to be made to feel fully comfortable here. And then allowing the eyes to close. And feeling those shoulders melt. Them just drop. Feel the legs get a little heavier and relax a little more. And finding that breath. And feeling the expansion of that breath. Feeling the release of that breath. And the exhales helping you to let go a little more, to drop a little deeper, just for a few more breaths here. Coming back to this idea of being here. Noticing where the mind is at in this moment. Bring it back. During any dance to which we surrender, the brain loses its controlling power. Allowing yourself to surrender in this moment just for a couple more breaths. Feeling that last little bit of letting go. Finding a little deeper breath. Connecting with the sensation of the breath in the body. So as you inhale, feel the expansion that happens. Feel the sensations in the back, in the sides, in the front. Keeping that belly nice and relaxed. So as you inhale, you can feel the rise of that belly, filling up the lungs a little more to feel the fullness of that breath, to feel the full movement of that breath. Nice big, big breath. And then slowly allowing movement to make its way back in. Slowly with intention. Starting to stretch and wiggle and move. Eventually rising up to seated when you're ready. Keep your eyes closed if you can on your journey. Staying inward. And when you arrive today, we're going to end a little bit differently. Well, we're not going to end differently, but we're going to arrive in a different place than usual. We're going to let those hands land on the knees, palms facing up. So coming into cross-legged if you can. Letting those hands just fall onto the knees, palms facing up, let the shoulders drop down, find a long spine. Again, the eyes are closed. So adding to that quote that I just gave you. During any dance to which we surrender with joy, the brain loses its controlling power and the heart takes up the reins. During any dance to which we surrender with joy, or I would even say just surrender, right? The brain loses its controlling power and the heart takes up the reins. Slowly lifting those hands up, bringing them together, drawing them into the heart center, tucking the chin, finding the breath again, this time here at the heart center, taking a nice deep inhale right into the heart center and exhaling, bowing down, saying thank you to yourself for showing up here on your mat.